London, 1892. The city never truly slept. Even after midnight, gas lamps flickered through the fog, carriage wheels rattled over wet cobblestones, and shadows moved where no one wanted to look too closely. But somewhere in that darkness walked a man who looked perfectly respectable. He wore fine clothes. He spoke with confidence. He carried himself with the authority of a professional. People trusted him. After all, he was a doctor. What they didn't know was that behind the polished appearance lurked one of the most dangerous killers Victorian Britain had ever seen. His name was Dr. Thomas Neill Cream, and death seemed to follow wherever he went. At first glance, Cream appeared destined for success. Born in Scotland in 1850 and raised in Canada, he came from a respectable family and received a medical education at a time when doctors were among the most trusted people in society. Patients saw healers. Communities saw gentlemen. The medical profession opened doors, and Cream knew exactly how to walk through them. But beneath the surface, something darker was taking shape. Even as a young man, stories began to circulate about his behavior toward women. Rumors, whispers, allegations, nothing concrete, nothing that could destroy his career. Yet wherever he went, suspicion seemed to follow. And soon, suspicion would become something much worse. In the late 1870s, Cream established himself as a doctor in Chicago. It should have been the beginning of a respectable life. Instead, it became the beginning of a trail of death. One of his patients was a young woman named Kate Gardner. She became pregnant shortly afterward. She died under mysterious circumstances. The official cause pointed toward complications from an abortion procedure. But many believed there was more to the story. Questions emerged. Had Cream been involved? Had he administered something dangerous? Or was it simply a tragic medical outcome? No one could prove anything, and so he remained free. But freedom only made him bolder. As the years passed, deaths accumulated around him. Women fell ill suddenly. Healthy people deteriorated without warning. Victims experienced agonizing symptoms that seemed to appear from nowhere. The common thread was often invisible. Poison, a killer's weapon that leaves no footprints. No gunshots, no screams heard from down the street. Just a gradual descent into sickness and death. And Thomas Neill Cream appeared to have developed a disturbing fascination with it. Then came a turning point. A man named Daniel Stott died after receiving medication connected to Cream. This time authorities looked closer. The evidence was stronger. The circumstances were harder to explain away. Eventually, Cream was convicted. Not for the string of suspicious deaths that surrounded him. Not for the growing cloud of rumors. For one murder. One proven murder. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment. At last, it seemed the danger was over. The killer was behind bars. The story should have ended there. But somehow, it didn't. Years later, through circumstances that remain controversial to this day, Cream was released. A convicted murderer walked free, and he immediately disappeared into the world once again. He traveled to London, the largest city in the British Empire, a city packed with millions of people, millions of strangers, millions of potential victims. If there was ever a place where a predator could hide, this was it. And hide he did. Victorian London was a city of contrasts. Extreme wealth stood beside crushing poverty. Elegant gentlemen crossed paths with desperate laborers. And among the crowded streets, Thomas Neill Cream began hunting again. His preferred victims were often vulnerable women. Many struggled financially. Some worked late into the night. Others had few people who would ask questions if they suddenly disappeared. Cream approached them with confidence. Sometimes he offered medicine. Sometimes he offered help. And sometimes he offered death disguised as treatment. Victims collapsed. Doctors became confused. Families searched for answers. And the body count slowly began to rise. But Cream wasn't satisfied with merely killing. What made him truly unusual was what he did afterward. He began sending letters, anonymous letters. letters accusing innocent people of the murders, letters demanding money, letters threatening exposure, letters that turned investigations into chaos. It was as though he wanted to play a game with the police, a game in which he controlled both the crime and the investigation. Every death created confusion. Every letter created another layer of deception, and for a while it worked. Authorities chased false leads. Suspicion landed on the wrong people. The real killer remained hidden behind the respectable face of a physician. But even the most careful predators make mistakes, and Cream was becoming reckless. The more successful he became, the more confident he became. The more confident he became, the more careless he became. Investigators noticed patterns. Witnesses remembered encounters. The letters themselves began pointing back toward their author. What had once looked like clever manipulation started to resemble a trail leading directly to Dr. Thomas Neill Cream. The hunter was slowly becoming the hunted. As detectives tightened their net, the pressure grew. Questions became interrogations, suspicions became evidence. And eventually, the walls closed in. Cream was arrested. This time, there would be no easy escape, no confusion, no convenient explanation. The case against him grew stronger with every detail uncovered. The doctor who had hidden behind respectability for years finally stood exposed, not as a healer, but as a killer. His trial captivated the public. Victorian Britain was fascinated. Newspapers filled with details. Crowds discussed the case. People struggled to understand how a man trained to save lives could spend so much effort taking them. Yet perhaps that was exactly what made him so dangerous. No one expected a doctor. Trust had been his disguise. Authority had been his weapon. And poison had been his method. The jury reached its verdict, guilty. Thomas Neill Cream was sentenced to death. After years of suspicion, manipulation, and murder, the end had finally arrived. Or at least, that is what everyone thought. Because even at the very end, Cream managed to leave behind one final mystery. On November 15, 1892, he was led to the gallows. The executioner prepared the noose. Officials watched. Witnesses waited. The condemned doctor stood facing his final moments. Then, according to one of the most enduring legends in criminal history, Cream began to speak. Some claimed he started to say, "I am Jack," before the trapdoor opened beneath him. The sentence was never finished. The words were cut short forever. And immediately, speculation exploded. Was he about to confess to being Jack the Ripper, the infamous killer who had terrorized London only a few years earlier? Or was it nothing more than a coincidence, a misunderstood remark, a myth created after the fact? To this day, historians remain deeply skeptical of the claim. Most believe there is no convincing evidence that Thomas Neill Cream was Jack the Ripper. But the mystery survives, because unfinished sentences have a way of haunting history. In the end, Thomas Neill Cream left behind more than victims. He left behind questions. Questions about trust. Questions about power. Questions about how easily evil can hide behind respectability. He wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. He wasn't an obvious villain. He was a doctor, a man people welcomed into their lives, a man people believed, and that may be the most disturbing part of all. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is not the one who looks suspicious. It's the one everyone trusts. And for years, Victorian London trusted Dr. Thomas Neill Cream. Subscribe for more.